Hey, what's up, Planeswalkers? This is Karn MTG, and we all know that Magic is an expensive hobby. But just how expensive is it? Today, we're going to be looking at 3 separate formats and calculating how much a player of each of these formats spends on average per year. First, we'll be tackling what is, according to the Wizards of the Coast, the most commonly played constructed format, Standard. We'll be looking at the 3 main money suckers for Standard players, which are decks, events, and materials. Alright, so Standard rotates every 18 months, and the average player would buy 1 deck for each rotation. And if that's true, then that player would, on average, be buying 2/3 of a deck every year. So here's the part where there's the most variance, and this is in how much each deck costs. But I took everyone into account from the most casual player to the most competitive player, and I think about the average deck cost would be about $100. But you have to take into account that you're really only buying 2/3 of a deck on average every year, so the total comes out to $67 that an average Standard player spends on decks every year. Now, I realize a lot of you are probably spending more than this because a lot of you are a bit more competitive than average because you're watching Magic YouTube and stuff like that, but this is the average that I did come out with. Friday Night Magic is another thing that Standard players spend a significant amount of money on. So, assuming you went twice a month, which I think is about average, and most places charge about $5 per event, then this will be $120 total. You'll also probably need to buy sleeves and a deck box about once a year, so that adds up to $11. So if you add up all these numbers together, you get $198. So it costs about $200 a year for the average player to play Standard. But keep in mind that this does not include booster packs, and for a lot of players this could easily double the amount of money that they're spending every year. So maybe keep the booster packs down and only spend your money on your decks and things that are necessary, and it will really reduce the cost of playing Magic. The next thing we'll be focusing on is the booster draft, and the main things that you will have to pay for when you play this format are just events and materials. Since you don't have to buy decks separately for draft, let's start with Friday Night Magic costs. At that same rate of twice a month, and assuming your store charges about $13 per event, your total for Friday Night Magic per year comes out to $312. If you usually reuse sleeves, but not every time, you might buy 2 packs of sleeves every year, which comes out to $16. So your total per year comes out to $328 American dollars. Now, this may seem way more expensive than playing Standard, but keep in mind that there's a lot more variance in Standard in how much you're paying, because decks can cost a wide range of amounts of money, while in draft, really a competitive player isn't going to be paying much more than a casual player. So if you have a very competitive Standard deck, it's going to end up being more than $328. If you have an average or a cheap Standard deck, it's going to be a lot less than $328. Alright, so lastly, we're doing Modern, where we're going to look at events, materials, and decks. Keep in mind that although we're covering Modern, the price and the way the price works are very similar to other Eternal formats such as Legacy, Vintage, Commander, etc. So a Modern deck is about $200, plus the deck box and sleeves at $11 comes out to $211. However, you're not going to buy a nuke deck every year, because one of the great things about Modern is that decks last forever. So, assuming you get a new deck about every 3 years, then you take 211, divide it by 3, and you're paying on average $70 a year. Now, just like with Standard, we have to pay about $5 per event, which comes out to $120 if you're doing 2 events a month. So this will surprisingly put Modern at only $190 compared to the $328 of Draft and the $198 of Standard. But keep in mind, these are just my estimations for what the average is for these formats. If you think any of my calculations weren't quite right, or if you think my averages were a little bit off, let me know what you think in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Make sure to check out my Instagram at CarnKidMTG, all one word, and click the links on screen or in the description down below to watch more videos. Thanks for watching, and have a magical day.